Today, for our Art Stop Quick Craft, we're going to create some flowered letters using watercolor paint. And our inspirational object is the subscriber page for an 18th century seed catalog. I have a copy of this 18th century subscriber page to a seed catalog. You can see a list of the names to the people who subscribe to the catalog, as well as flowers decorating the edges, and you could buy seeds for those flowers. We're going to use these flowers as inspiration to create some letters using watercolor paints. So to get started, you need some watercolor paints, some paper, a pencil, water, and a paintbrush. So I'm going to start by drawing a letter onto my paper, and I'm going to use the first letter of my first name, but you could use first letter to your first name or your last name, maybe a grandchild's letter, maybe you want to make something for your neighbor who lives across the street. And I'm just going to very lightly draw in pencil on my paper. Here's my C. And then I'm going to take a look at these flowers, and I'm going to draw some of these flowers onto my paper. So I'm going to start with this little flower just here. It's a circle, surrounded by a circle, surrounded by a little fluffy circle. And I'm going to put a few of them just here on my C. Down here, over here on this seed catalog, I'm going to use these lovely little blue flowers to finish up my name. I might put a tulip down here. Got a lovely tulip here. Put this tulip over here. And you can see I'm filling in my letter with the flowers. Anytime I have a little empty space, I'm going to put in some stems and add some leaves. And you're going to continue until you get your flower, your letter completely filled with all of those flowers. And I have a completed letter here. You can see I've added my fluffy little flowers here, some star-shaped flowers here, some lovely little carnations, some tulips, and these little blue flowers. Now, once I get that completed, I'm going to go in and I'm going to lightly erase all of those lines from my original letter. And if I get all of them, that's great. And if not, don't worry about it. Go in and do a little bit of erasing. And you can see on this picture, I've erased all of those lines. I've gotten most of them. Some of them are still remaining. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to work with some paint to get these decorative elements all colored in. And when it comes to working with watercolor paint, you want to choose the colors that you're going to work with. Wet your brush and go into your little paint palette and get that paint loosened up. I have some paper towels here that I can use to clean off my brush as I go. Let's see, a little bit of orange. I think I might start by painting that tulip. So once I get the paint all loosened up, I'm going to start painting my flowers using a little bit of the lighter colors first. It's easier to go in with your darker colors on top of your lighter colors as opposed to starting with the dark colors and trying to go back and make them lighter. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to paint in this tulip. And the thing that I love about watercolor is as you're using it, you get all of these different tones. Sometimes they're light, sometimes they're darker. And it's just really interesting as it dries, it creates this wonderful texture to your painting. Once I get this tulip all painted, I'm going to let that dry and move on to some of my other flowers so I can come back and add a darker color on top of that tulip. I always think of these as wonderful examples of spring flowers. Tulip is so great. So I've got my tulip all painted in with orange. I'm going to move on to a little bit of blue. Get that blue all loosened up. Come down here and paint in those blue flowers. And once I get that blue all painted in, I'm going to let those dry and go in and paint in some purple flowers. Again, painting those lighter colors first, and then I can go in and darken those up a little bit later on. Ah, that's the purple that I want. So I can come over here, paint in those purple flowers. Can always go in and make them darker. And you're going to do the same thing with the stems. I tend to start with a light green on the stems and the leaves, because I can always go back in and make them darker later on. And by adding a little bit of darker color, again, it gives it a little bit of depth and texture. You can see by adding a little bit more water, it changes color along the way as well. So once I've gotten kind of my lighter layers in, I can go in and add a little bit of darker colors to my flowers. So overlaying a little bit of darker purple there, and these little carnation buds. Going and adding a little bit of darker blue on my bluer flowers. And then you can do the same thing to your green stems. So I'm going to continue all the way around my flower and get all of those colors painted in. Ooh, let me add a little bit of red to that tulip. Overpaint that tulip just a little bit. And you're going to fill in all the way around until you get all of your flowers painted. And then you have a lovely letter utilizing this 18th century seed catalog. And the last thing that you want to do is sign your name. Thank you so much for coming by for our Art Stop Quick Craft today. Have fun playing around with watercolor paints. It's always nice to have a place to start when it comes to doing a little bit of art, and using an 18th century image is such a great inspiration. Feel free to pop back. We'll be adding more videos as time progresses. Thanks for coming.